Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni, the great Malabai.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Victoria Tundu. I'm Abiola. You waiting for that?
Good morning.
Yes. Let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of record, the lead story. You have till December to crush all terrorists, bandits. Buhari orders armed forces. Federal government says security situation has improved nationwide. Vow to contain terror financing. Yes, other newspapers are also reporting this story. Before I say something on that. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper will eliminate all terrorists by December. Is it December 1 or December 31? Well, by the end of the year, terrorism will go with the year 2022. That is what they are promising. Now, the Daily Trust, still with the Daily Trust, says worst of insecurity is over. Counter-insurgency, not fair fight. Defense Minister, economic reforms must support military offensive. Security experts. Now, the Daily Independent newspaper also reporting this story. Federal government draws flag over comment that wars of insecurity is over. It is living in denial. Reason terrorism has escalated. Afenifere government has brought insecurity to the level it is today. Pandef. Federal government dreaming or telling us a different story. Middlebelt Forum. We have lost faith in Buhari's administration. Catholic bishops. Orchestrated, well-attended media briefing yesterday. The Minister of Information, the Minister of Internal Affairs, because the Chief of Defense Staff was there also. And the promise to eliminate all terrorists by December. Well, is it an order or a wish? But this day reporting, it was an order from the president. As Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, the Minister of Internal Affairs, stated yesterday, this order to be carried out. Yes, there have been up-tempo in the attacks on the terrorists in their hideout. There's been the momentum from the military. What is the reason for this tempo that has been raised? Is it the president's order some time ago that you now have the freedom, as if somebody shackled the military in the past, that we are seeing this result? Or is it new equipment? Of course, we've always had the Tucano jets, which we once thought would be the killer blow. But since expending that amount, these jets arriving, things not changed significantly. But now, the military pursuing the terrorists into their den. The other day, it was Sambisa Forest. And I was wondering, is Sambisa Forest still the hideout of terrorists? I thought we vanquished them there a long time ago, but of course, maybe technically. But we'll see how it unfolds December. But we'll need to hear from perhaps Nasir El-Rufai, who told the world that these terrorists have created a parallel government in his states. Does that say something about the scale of the insecurity? Because Nigerians who live in those spaces where these terrorists have turned into their territory obey them as a government, because perhaps the government they voted in to protect their lives and property has not done so. Now, if we look at other stories quickly, the Punch newspaper Yes, the Punch newspaper. No, let's start with the Guardian newspaper. Now, Wike accuses Atiku, Okowa, ASUU of sharing positions ahead of 2023. Vows to fight on as PDP holds crucial neck meeting. NEC meeting shaky, governors BOT divided. 2023 about legacies, competencies, says Ikpeazu. Move on. Wike not political deity. PDP told. APC backs Tinubu over visit to Jonathan. I will talk less, do more. Tinubu replies PDP. Propaganda will take no presidential candidate anywhere, says Agunloye. Now, still on the Wike story, of course, the Vanguard is reporting 48 hours to NEC meeting. PDP set for make or mass session. ASUU rallies against removal bid. PDP APC crisis, blessing in disguise for Labour Party. No one can break my bond with Makinde, Ikpeazu, Otom, Wike. We want proper share of our political positions, he says. 2023 is about Operation Show Your Work, Ikpeazu. Now, the Nation newspaper also reporting the Wike story. PDP crisis, I will crush my detractor, says Wike. It's too late to break my ranks. Atiku already sharing positions before poll, says Rivers governor. That's the Nation newspaper. Now, the Punch newspaper, Muslim ticket. No agreement with Tinubu. Can insist. Talks tough. Donation to Kuka Center, not bribe to pacify Christians, says Khan. Khan's conscience, not for sale. Prophetic voice cannot be silenced. Christian body saying, PDP jittery over Tinubu's visit to Jonathan. APC on Nanuga promises issue-based campaign. Yes. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, fuel scarcity looms as marketers threaten strike over 76 billion naira debt. Say they pay over 1.7 million naira to operate each truck. Yes, fuel marketers in the northern part of the country are on strike as we speak because the bridging costs that they ought to receive payment from the government, they have not, and they are being owed as much as 76 billion naira according to these marketers. Hence, they're on strike for the next 3 days. I hope somebody will attend to them. Somebody from the government side will attend to these marketers so that Nigerians in the northern part of the country don't suffer another round of fuel scarcity, long queues, and all the attendant consequences. Now, the Business Day newspaper, Nigeria's rising interest rates fail to lure foreign investors. Yes, but there's another story also on the front page of Business Day. Atiku Obi Tinubu yet to break out of strongholds. Business Day's analysis of Google Trends data on search interest shows that the three major presidential candidates for the 2023 elections have yet to expand beyond their strongholds. That's the Business Day analysis there. But we must talk about Kenya. Of course, yesterday, the Supreme Court in Kenya, very efficient. If they have to annul, they annul. If they have to uphold, they do just that. In 14 days, any lesson for Nigeria. Of course, the back page of this day, Reuben Abati. Yes, Tuesday with Reuben Abati, Kenya, William Ruto's triumph. Of course, Abati is dilating on the Kenyan election and that outcome from the Supreme Court. But the good thing is that the likes of Raila Odinga has decided to be sportsmanly and statesmanly. So there's peace in Kenya. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly, no prize for guessing the headlines of the newspapers in the UK. The Guardian newspaper, The Guardian UK. Truss wins, but can she avert the looming crisis? Yes, the fourth prime minister in 6 years faces race against time to tackle cost of living emergency. Of course, other newspapers are also reporting the story. The Times of London, straight to business, Trust plans energy bill freeze and fear of mass bankruptcies. She will be appointed Prime Minister by the Queen today. Now, I just couldn't resist the Daily Mail reportage and summation of this moment. The Daily Mail newspaper. Comment the hour, comment the woman. The Daily Mail reporting, no Prime Minister since Maggie has faced a tougher in trade than Liz Truss. Now she plans a shock and awe on energy bills, tax, and NHS to stamp a mark in Britain. Yes, Liz Truss. Now, just before I hand over to you guys, the Wall Street Journal reporting, Judge orders review of Trump's record. Yes, special master to be appointed as Department of Justice must pause using materials for any criminal probe. Of course, Trump went to court and a federal judge in Florida ordered the appointment of a special master to review documents seized from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property. Of course, a move that will temporarily put a halt on that criminal investigation by the Department of Justice. Ruben Rufai and the beautiful Tundu.
So kind.
Yes.
For me, it's all about Liz Truss this morning and the fact that, it's hardly, the surprise of the century, but, we now have a new PM with no mandate, it must be said. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the parliamentary system, but it does sound a bit odd that England or the United Kingdom has been, governed now by somebody with absolutely no mandate and who cannot democratically diverge in any way from Boris Johnson's manifesto. Otherwise, she's going to have to call an election. So their system is just extremely weird to us. Can you imagine a situation where, I don't know, something happens within the APC and they see off the president and install somebody else without the say-so of the rest of Nigeria? I don't think so. So that, for me, even though I'm a huge fan of the parliamentary system, is a bit strange, it must be said. And there hasn't been an awful lot of confidence, if the polls are anything to go by, in her abilities. I think she's polling somewhere around 14% in terms of the percentage of the public who think she'll be a good prime minister, according to the YouGov polls. Well, the polls were slightly wrong, weren't they, with regards to the results? Yes, she was predicted to win, but by a wider margin. So maybe it's not quite as bleak, but she really is not going to get any sort of honeymoon. Usually you get about 6 months wriggle room before you're expected to perform, but she does not have that. We're looking now at approaching winter
she
in
knows
the United
magnitude
Kingdom.
of the problem.
Yes, she had better, and it's kill or cure right now. There's going to be no notion of any kind of partial success. She either gets this cost of living crisis and inflation under control, or that's it for her and her party, facing political annihilation actually at the polls, because Labour is there waiting in the wings. And there's also the issue of uniting the party. You'll notice, did you see that body language? When she was announced as the winner, she took her speech from her husband and walked right past Rishi Sunak. She didn't even shake his hand. Yes, and I'm like, oh, so you're definitely not getting a seat in the cabinet. And it's just been such a divisive, ugly, rancorous period. She needs to unite the party. All political parties are in the business of winning elections, staying in power, and that's really such a tough challenge before her.
At least not as rancorous as the PDP.
I know.
Yes, Ruben. I want to comment on Kenya.
Yes.
And I don't want to repeat myself.
Yes.
Just to respond to the point that you made about how Raila Odinga has been so statesmanly and so sportsmanly, No, I disagree. I don't think so. Because he and Martha Karua, his running mate, having lost out yesterday at the Supreme Court, 7 major issues consolidated from 9 petitions. All of these were reduced to 9 issues for determination, and the Supreme Court just dismissed the petitioners, and then affirmed William Ruto as the validly elected person under Article 140, subsection 3 of the Constitution.
A lot of calculation was done yesterday.
No. When I say dismiss, it's a legal term.
Yeah,
it means
okay.
they rejected their petitions. Now, okay, Martha Karua and Odinga,
yes,
they then came around and said, well, we respect the rule of law and the Constitution, but we disagree with the Supreme Court. And later we will issue a statement as to how to continue to pursue the objectives of transparency and accountability. So, well, if that's what you interpret as being sportsmanly, well, maybe that's how you see it. But I don't quite see that.
They respected the decision
now,
of the court.
The second issue, in terms of lessons that we can learn from Kenya, and I'll be very brief in that regard, is that if you look at this, the elections were held August 9. By August 15, the results were announced. The Constitution of Kenya says you have within 7 days to file a petition. And the ASUU, led by Odinga, they quickly filed their petition within that frame. Within 2 weeks, the court has the latitude under the law to determine the matter. So all of this between August 15 and today, September 6, the matter has been determined. And by next week, William Ruto, will be sworn in as the 5th president of Kenya. If it were here in Nigeria, our law does not allow for that expeditious treatment. The matter will first go to the Court of Appeal. It will drag there, and then the president will be sworn in. And then the president who has been sworn in, who may have been wrongly put in the position, he will now use state institutions, he will use state resources to hold himself in that position. That, for me, in addition to other lessons that we can also identify, is probably the strongest lesson that we can take from Kenya to deal with these election matters expeditiously by granting in presidential elections the original jurisdiction, of course, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, but not in presidential elections. By granting the Supreme Court the original jurisdiction in presidential elections, so that after the election, quickly we deal with the matter and the person gets sworn in. Not that you will now go there, you'll be manipulating institutions, you'll be using state resources to keep yourself on a chair where you may not have been validly elected into. That's my point. The other point is that the National Universities Commission is today meeting with pro-chancellors and vice-chancellors of universities on the lingering ASUU crisis. We hope that all the persons that will show up at that meeting, all the stakeholders, they will put the interests of Nigeria first. They will put the interests of the university system first. They will put the interests of the future of education in Nigeria first. Already, 11 state universities have said they are not part of this strike. And many in Nigeria say the strike has gone on for too long. And everyone is looking up to that meeting today, hoping that there will be light at the end of the tunnel so that schools can reopen at the tertiary level in Nigeria.
Rufai, just before you come in, something that seldom happened in our climb. The front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, Lekki building collapse. Lagos commissioner quits as death toll rises to 6. He resigned.
Okay.
And the governor of Lagos State, as I said, it's not something that happens very often in our climb.
I'm happy somebody is taking responsibility for that, but that building collapse should not have happened in the first place because that building project was stopped. So who gave the authorization for it to continue after it was first flagged and stopped?
No, the report is that each time this thing is stopped, the builder or the developer, very obstinate, will break in. Even when they seal, it will break in. But again, we must enforce.
We must enforce.
enforce our law.
So two things. So let me first react to what they said about Liz Truss. What was happening in my very funny head was that if she has the lever, she should call for snap elections very soon to consolidate herself.
She will lose.
And I hope that
she's
the Labour
not going
Party
to take a risk like
I hope the Labour Party will prod her and push her.
Who inherited healthy majority, called
I hope
election and had.
I hope Keir Starmer will push her and prod her to call for that
slim majority
election and tell her every time that she's doing PMQs that she's not legitimate, so that she will push for that snap election and we'll see them for who they are. Because
she's
the Conservative Party,
she's going to be the prime minister, and that's it.
Have become clueless, have become talentless. You know why I say so? Even all the ideas that, but even all our ideas are Labour's idea. So the Conservative Party is now Labour Lights, Labour 2.0. That's what it has become now. That's that about British policy. But great point you made, Dr. Abati, and I also talking in terms of that. The funny thing is, Kenya learned from their experience, but we don't learn from our experience. The Supreme Court, in the constitutional review that was done, had that expeditious, capacity to be able to do whatever they were doing because of the experience Kenya learned from Mr. Kibaki's election and this same Raila Odinga. Because prior to that time, there was no intervention of the courts. And Kenya learned for us to bring sanity back to our system, the Supreme Court must be able to execute quickly and uphold our democracy. The question is, what have we learned from our own elections? I think Kenya has led the way, like you said, Dr. Abati, and we should learn from Kenya.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Feni.